Line out. Whoa. Oh, I'm stuck.
Division 2 live with Tux, and it's Sunday night. What's up, Bandidos? Welcome to the live stream. We got a good show for you tonight. Big topic. But before we jump into the topic of the evening, let's do a quick sound check. So if you can hear me loud and clear, somebody please give me a hashtag TuxLive in the chat so I know that I'm coming in loud and clear. Hashtag TuxLive in the chat, please. Otherwise, kick back, listen to the jams, get in the zone. Welcome everybody joining the live stream. All right, 92 Alpha, appreciate you. Typhoon, Michael, you guys, appreciate you. All right, it sounds like I'm coming in live and clear. So let's let people jump on into the stream here. Just take a second, and then we will get going on the topic of the night. What's up, Corey? Appreciate you, man. Daniel Paxton, welcome, brother. Tux Live. Pico! Loud and clear, thanks, man. What's going on, Brandon, brother? Hope that baby's doing wonderful things for you and your family. Hope you guys are happy. It's always fun bringing a baby home, brand new baby. Hope you're getting in that sleep. Probably not. Actually, they sleep a lot in the first few days. I'm sure you realize that. Unless you got a colicky baby. What's going on, Mr. Johnson? Appreciate you, man. I'm doing good. Glad to be here. Glad to be talking Division 2 details. The finite details of builds. What up, Rulio? I'm saying that right? Welcome, brother. Renee. Appreciate you, man. Glad you love the builds. I love making them. All right. So it's Sunday night, and just as a recap, so in last week's stream, we talked about some of the most powerful weapons in the game, and they all had one thing in common, is that they were all made out of wood, which is kind of funny. So the concept wood is good, is what we dubbed the live stream, and the idea was basically that if you're getting if you get a drop and the gun is made out of wood, there's a good chance that it's a really good weapon and you're overlooking it. Anyways, it's a great stream, so you should check that out. Also, if you guys didn't know, I do have a channel dedicated to live streams. I'm sorry, I have a playlist dedicated to live streams on my channel, so go there if you missed any of the past ones. But tonight we're going to be talking about something that is actually really confusing. It's confusing for me, it's confusing for you, it's confusing to new players and veteran players alike. And most of that is because the devs have been inconsistent on the deliveries of these items. But we're going to be talking about damage multipliers for skills, particularly, but damage multipliers. So when I say that, I'm talking about things like multiplicative damage types that you might also know as damage to armor, damage to health, damage to targets out of cover, these type of things. Amplified damage, which is also multiplicative. So we're going to be talking about those, and what we want to clear the air on is what skills that they work for and which ones that they don't work for. And that is the confusing part. You guys know what I mean? So you might see some hybrid skill builds running this or that multiplicative damage, and it might not be working as they intended it to work. And it might seem intuitive, but it's not. And that's why we need to discuss it today. And just so you know, there's a lot of these that haven't been ultimately determined on whether they work or not. And the reason why is because they're really difficult to test. And a lot of that's due to the White House testing range not being consistent in its purpose. So you have to test some of these things out in the field, and of course there's so many variables out there, it makes it really difficult to do that. What up, Brendan? Welcome to the live stream. Corey Leith asks, can you teach us if it's better to have 3 crit chance mods on your skill damage build or 3 headshot mods? We can talk about that. Steven Johnson was just grinding for one of your builds, and I wonder if Tux has started yet. Well, here we are. You had good intuition. We are starting. What up, George? Welcome, brother. George Noble has joined the live stream. Mike Myers says, I feel like Division 2 made this a little easier than Division 1. I'm so far removed from Division 1, I cannot agree or disagree. I feel like when I left that game, I didn't look back, and now I can't remember it. That's funny. I literally cannot remember Division 1. I just remember like little glimpses of it. But it's been a while since I've been in that game. I left before they made some of the bigger improvements, like they brought the survival mode. I left before that. Did that come after Division 2? Did they bring survival mode in after Division 2? I can't recall. I think I might have went over to Battlefield after Division 1. I can't remember. All right, Typhoon, we'll see you on the other side, brother. Thanks for stopping by, saying hello. So, Blizzak 187's Gaming Channel Unplugged. I did a striker skill build, aka I rolled 4 strikers into a skill tier and ran Obliterate and Versatile. Also rolled a skill tier, and it was ripping with the capacitor. Yes, we have that build actually, and it's called the Perfect Blend. And in that build video, I talked about, yeah, so good find, great minds think alike. Blizzak, appreciate that, man. In that build video, Perfect Blend, we discussed how so many are sleeping on 4-piece striker, and I think many people are disappointed with the striker build set because I think they compare it to, you know, the Division 1 striker build set, and I think that's why it's disappointing, but otherwise it's just amazing. If you guys didn't know, the RPM, additional RPM, is a multiplicative statistic, so that alone is going to boost your build's damage, but the amplified damage on the back, or from having a 4-piece, adds up to be a lot, and I don't think the indicator gives it justice. The little meter, little amplified meter that comes with striker, I don't think it really gives it justice to what it's actually doing. But you missed some, you hit some, but overall it's adding in your favor, and I think that, you know, when you're playing a legendary, a 4-piece striker really comes in handy because those NPCs are really tanky, and of course when you're doing larger groups, taking on larger groups. But yeah, that's one of my favorite builds, man. I'm really appreciating it too, and I agree, it makes the capacitor slap. Also because it adds that added weapon handling, and the capacitor already has some weapon handling on it through a mod, and so it handles really well. And I found when I was using the 4-piece striker build that I was increasing my accuracy from 45%, which is pretty high, but that's thanks to the capacitor. I was jumping it up to 50% with the 4-piece striker. So that's a lot. So landing 5% more of your shots is a lot. That adds up to be a lot of damage. And you will steal those most kill numbers and highest damage numbers in your build when you're running it in a group. Ultra Mega Man says he's addicted to using Perfect Blend. Yeah, me too, man. But hopefully we can break that addiction with some newer builds that we have coming down the pipeline. Okay, so let's talk about a couple of these things. So I think the easiest one to get out of the way is the ballistic skills. So when I say ballistic skills, so ballistic skills are basically any of the skills that use bullets. I'll just dumb it down to that. So that would be the assault turret, the striker drone, and the sniper turret. So those are our ballistic skills. So when it comes to damage modifiers, we have damage to armor, damage to health, damage to targets out of cover. We also have explosive damage and skill damage, which are additive, not multiplicative damage types, but those also impact skills, right? And then there's weapon damage. Okay, we'll talk about weapon damage as well, which doesn't sound intuitive, or it sounds intuitive actually, but it's not. So we'd be like, well, it's a weapon damage type, so that's not going to affect any of the skills. Ooh, there's a couple of hidden ones in there too. I'm wondering if you guys can guess that. So what skills are affected by weapon damage? That's a question. That's a crazy question, right? So think about that. Weapon damage. What skills are affected by weapon damage? So that's the secret question of the day there. So I'm gonna see if somebody can catch that one. So if you know the answer to that, give me your reply in the chat. Let me know if you know what skills actually are affected by weapon damage. It's not very obvious. But anyway, so talking about our ballistic skills, damage to armor. All right, so damage to armor. So you're gonna find this on 2 pieces of Walker Harris. You could also find damage to armor on Contractor's gloves, and of course, you know, you can put it as a modifier in your weapon. The capacitor itself has damage to armor and damage to health, right? So the turret and the drone, the sniper turret. Let me ask: does that take? Do the ballistic skills take damage to armor? Does their damage increase if you have damage to armor on your build? Does anybody know the answer to that? I know the answer, of course. I'm just gonna give you guys a little a chance to reply, because I know a lot of I like to pull details from the crowd, source some of these answers from the crowd too, because I know you guys also have an interesting perspective on it that I might not have as well. So love to hear you guys' thoughts. Renee Didier Lozano Rubio, that's gonna be fun to say, asks, Tux, have you tried building Hunter's Fury but with skill damage? Yeah, I have. Actually, it's about a couple of months old now. That came right after Slaughter, the Slaughter build, but before Game Over. It's called Juice. On the cover it says this build has juice. And we are using a 4-piece Hunter's Fury, I believe with the capacitor, so we are pairing it up with the AR. And then I'm running 2 ballistic skills, the assault turret and the drone. And I really like it, especially when you're tackling those groups of enemies, you know, kind of coming off of a legendary helicopter or something like that, because it applies that status effect, which buys you just enough time that you need to either waste the rest of the enemies or reload, right? So yeah, Hunter's Fury works really good. Really like it. That added amplified damage as well, which of course is only impacting your primary weapon and not your skills, but it's either way, it's super helpful in helping to balance out the skills and the primary weapon with each other. Yeah, definitely give it a try. The only downside of it, of course, is that, you know, you have to be within that range, and 15 meters, and a lot of enemies, especially in Legendary, which is where I like to prove out most of these builds, but of course it worked amazing in Heroic. That's without saying. But in Legendary, you know, they play really deep, right? They kind of come up on you and then they run away really far, right? They go out like 100 meters and then they happen to land headshots on you from way out there. And so that could be frustrating. And with the Hunter's Fury build, you know, obviously you have to be up and close to get all that amplified damage. So it's sort of asking you to push up on the enemy. It's something to consider. So the answer is, let's see here. I think it does. I guess Ultra Mega Man's guessing no. The question was, do the ballistic skills receive damage to armor? I think it does. Yes, it does. No, it doesn't, from Ace Rock. But yeah, I mean, so that's the point that I wanted to make here. See, we got conflicting answers. So Dispatch says, I would say no. Hey, Dispatch, welcome, brother. Dispatch digs deep into this stuff, so I always like to hear his opinions. Haven't had the chance to test anything more. With little time I've had, been going to the manhunt. Yeah, I hear you. I would say no, except for very specific scenarios. The boost is usually not that great and only lasts for 10 or 15 seconds. Let's see, is it worth it? Is it worth it to use overcharged builds? Yeah, that's a good question too. But the answer is no overall. So damage to armor doesn't affect your turret, drone, or sniper turrets. And that goes the same for damage to health, damage to targets out of cover, and explosive damage, as well as weapon damage. So all those damage types, so weapon damage is additive, but and so is explosive damage. But damage to armor, damage to health, and damage to targets out of cover are all the multiplicative damage types, and they do not affect your ballistic skills. And so when you see things like, or if you think you want to run like the Fox's Prayers and put skill damage, roll skill tier, Contractor's Gloves, put on skill damage, roll skill tier, that isn't going to be helping your skills. The multiplicative part of that isn't, of course. The skill damage is, and the skill tier will. But the multiplicative part, when you're running those pieces, are just going to be helping your primary weapon. So is it a good idea to run Fox's Prayers knee pads with a hybrid turret drone build? Sure it is. Because you might find, and I haven't personally tested this, but you might find that added damage to targets out of cover, although it's limited to only your weapon, that might be helping your weapon balance out with the power of your skills, which I believe which is my ultimate objective of a hybrid skill build. So for me, when I'm creating these hybrid skill builds like you guys have seen, what I'm trying to do, of course, is make the most powerful skills possible, with all the skill tiers and maxing on all the skill damage I can. But at the same time, I'm trying to make the most powerful primary weapon as possible. I'm trying to keep those in balance. I want that primary weapon to be just as powerful as my skills. And that's what makes you sort of a one-man army, right? So you got 3 things focusing fire on the same enemy for the fastest time to kill, the highest DPS. So that's the objective. So when you put on the Contractor's Gloves and Fox's Prayers, without those, you might feel your weapon is underpowered. But with those, they might be bringing your weapon closer to end range of the power that your skills are bringing. So help balance things out, if that makes sense. So they're not bad things to run on your build, but it is a decision you have to make because you are losing slots for those wasted attributes like LMG damage and rifle damage, and are the multipliers that are only applied to your weapon worth it? Could you put something there that would be more effective for both your weapon and your skills together? And would that be a more efficient build? So things to think about, right? Things to think about. And so there's 100 different scenarios. So again, when you try to test this in the testing range, you're not going to get the results you're looking for. I don't know if anybody has any luck testing these multiplicative modifiers with their skills in the range, but I'm not able to do it successfully. So I've tried doing it with perfect version and non-perfect version weapons, and there's certain things that are just not happening, that aren't treated the same in the testing range as what's happening in the rest of the world. So, for example, I believe damage to target out of cover, last I recall, it's not treating the enemies whether as if they're in cover or out of cover. So doesn't always work. Or it's just inconsistent also, like when you're pulsing an enemy, you might get inconsistent results with that as well. So anyways, there's just a lot of variables in there. It makes it nasty to test. So the only way the community can test this is in the open world, and our build, and there's so many variables in the open world that makes that testing even inconsistent. So if you look up on the forums, so a lot of the places where we get this information is from like Reddit forums, and that's how a community source this information. Before we test, or if we test independently, we want to confirm our testing results with other people who've tested. And you'll see that even within the greater Division 2 community, that there's a lot of discrepancy in what people are saying. So, anyways, but from what we can gather, from what we've tested, and from what we can all agree on, for the ballistic skills, none of the above affects them. So the best way to get power out of your skills are going to be through amplified damage, things like glass cannon on your chest piece, the backpack, the Eclipse backpack, the aggravator talent on the backpack, that's another amplified piece. Spotter is also another one. Those are going to be the strongest ways to boost up your skills, your ballistic skills, outside of skill damage, attributes, and skill tiers. So anyways, I hope that makes sense to you. I hope that makes it a little bit easier with the turret drones and the sniper turret, because we use those a lot. So when we're adding the multiplicative damage, we're boosting our weapon. So let's see what you guys have to say in the comments. Yeah, okay, I caught that. I caught that after the fact. I was talking about overcharged builds. Dispatch is saying not being worth it except in very specific scenarios. I agree with Dispatch there. I hardly ever use overcharged skills. I mean, cool if it's coming with something, but like I read, like for example, like here's, you have Future Perfect, right? The talent for your weapon that gives you overcharge if you're already at 6 skill tiers. And then and then you have In Sync, and I just find that In Sync is just way more powerful because it's two ways, buffing your skills and your weapons, and also there's no timer on it, where Overcharge usually has a timer, once every 60 seconds or something like that, once every 2 minutes, depending on what it is. That makes it really situational. And what we mean by situational is that overcharge isn't there when you want it to be, when you need it to be. Oh, I'm getting a big rush. Oh, there's a big spawn. I need to overcharge now, and it's not there. So that makes it situational. That's why I don't really like it. I like things that are consistent and damage that you can rely on. Blizzak 187 saying that he loves Emmeline's Guard with his skill builds. Yeah, that's a really nice way to balance things out, actually. Yeah, if you're looking for armor on kill, that's giving you the perfect version of preservation. And that's a lot of armor on kill if you get it with a headshot. It is an SMG, so you do have to play nice and close, which is okay for heroic, and legendary it can be challenging. But yeah, so if you're looking to add armor on kill, then that's one way to do it, especially for skill builds. Radiated Karma said, I tried your skill build status effect one, maybe the max blind one, or was this the one with the Scorpio, and ran 0 Fs instead of glass cannon, and it went great. Yeah, definitely. I can imagine that would work great. It's the other way to go, right? The exact opposite way to go. Go extreme more damage and penalty, or added extra life. Yeah, definitely imagine that would work out really nice. Depends on your playstyle. Ace Rock on a different subject asked, what do you think of Dark Winter SMG? I like the Dark Winter SMG. It's got a downside, and I think I was just talking about this with another build. What other build was it? Oh, the Backfire. And it's that timer, that 10-second window. So you get your kill, and you get that big buff of crit hit damage, right, for that lasts only 10 seconds. And it's a run and gun build. So what you're trying to do is chase enemies down and take them out as fast as possible. Course. But the downside is that when you're doing a control point, like let's say sinkhole, the enemies scatter out, and so I find that I lose that buff. So I activate it, I kill 1-2 enemies, activate it, and then I have to run across the field to get to the next guy, and the debuff is deactivated by then. So I got a video. Actually, this might be next week's topic as well, but I put out a video for the Chameleon. And when you start off that video, the first question I open with is, what is a better SMG, the Chameleon or the Vector, or the Dark Winter? Does that confuse anybody when I ask you that question? What is the better SMG, the Chameleon or the Vector Dark Winter? Yeah, something to think about. So our next thing is the Mortar turrets we're going to be talking about. So this one's interesting. So the Mortar turret you can only get currently until the next update. You can only equip that if you have Demolitionist equipped on your build, the Specialization Demolitionist. And with that, you get the Artillery Mortar turret, right? And so same question. So we have damage to armor, damage to health, we have damage to targets out of cover, explosive damage, skill damage, and weapon damage. So which of those works with the Mortar turret, or do all of them work with the Mortar turret? What about damage to armor? Does damage to armor work with the Mortar turret? You guys know that? Daniel Paxton asks, in your opinion, what's the 2 best skills to run? For me, like, you know, it's always going to be preference, but I think for newer players, okay, we're going to talk, you know, the Reviver Hive off the table for a moment. I would say probably the drone and the turret, the assault turret and the striker drone. But even for veteran players, as you know, if you guys have probably noticed, I'm creating this series of hybrid builds, trying to discover which one is the best, ultimate best hybrid skill build out there. And of course, that is super subjective. But I'm only using the turret and the drone, the assault turret and the striker drone. And that's because they put out a lot of damage consistently. They're constantly firing, right? Now, the striker drone, I think the assault turret, most people would agree with that, and the striker drone, I guess, is the variable in that equation. But the reason why I really like the assault drone, even though it goes down a lot, the enemies take it down a lot, especially in Legendary, even if you have 6 skill tiers and running Empress, whatever, they just tend to shoot it down a lot. But the reason why I really like it is because it's basically a shield. It distracts the enemy so much. I mean, you can run right to them and punch them in the face if you wanted to. So that's why I really like those. But I like the focus fire a lot too, and that's the other reason why I like them. So I can use my gun, the drone, and the turret all shooting on the same guy and give me the maximum DPS, which is really important if you're getting rushed or you're up against a named enemy or a boss to be able to do that. The other skills, like the mortar turret, I don't like, and the reason why is because it's sort of tedious to aim and fire and keep aiming and firing, that it's actually hard to shoot at the same time. You know, even if you are shooting and using the mortar turret at the same time, if you're attempting to do that, you are actually pausing to shoot when you launch that mortar. And so it breaks your shooting. So that's why I'm not a big fan of that one so much, but it's no doubt probably the strongest of all of the skills would be the mortar turret. Brandon Lookadoo asks me a question here. Not trying to get off topic, but out of the many backfire builds you have, which one is your favorite, including the one you just did? My backfire builds, I'd probably say that requires me to have to remember all of my backfire builds because I've created a lot. I'd probably say the first one is probably my favorite. It is the legendary Chunga Slayer is what it's called. It was creating over 1 million, which I really liked. And it used the Hollow Man, the Fox's Prayers, and the Contractor's Gloves. I think it was using all 3 of those. And it was a no bleed build. It was actually the oldest build video I created as well, coincidentally. But yeah, I think it's called the strongest hitting backfire build. I think that's one of my favorites. I think after that, it would probably be... I can't remember the name of the video, but I also made a max protection from elites video using the backfire. Actually, I think that's the one where I'm demonstrating the highest crit damage in the game. So I did achieve the highest crit damage in the game. Off the top of my head, that was like 427.5% crit damage. 427.5% crit damage. And I was only off by 0.5% than maximum possible crit damage in the game. And that's because I had just had one mod that wasn't fully equipped or fully stacked up to 10% bleed or crit damage or something like that. But in that build series, I believe there's one in there that has max protection from elites and it uses the backfire with no bleed status. And I think I'm running Adrenaline Intimidate and it hits really hard. So that's a fun one. I'll definitely give that one a try. Eclipse 187 says, sorry I haven't been catching the stream Tux, but in the DZ catching manhunts. You do what you gotta do, brother. Get him. Get him. So the mortar turret. Okay, this is why the mortar turret is one of the most powerful skills in the game. It accepts damage to armor. It accepts damage to health. Of course, it accepts explosive damage and skill damage on top of that. So when you put all of those things together, you're getting amazing amounts of damage. So you're adding that multiplicative damage on top of the additive damage, on top of amplified damage if you go that route as well. And that's why you can make that mortar turret hit really hard. So most of the explosive skills accept the same types of damage, with some caveats to it. And thank you, devs, for making it really complicated, but there are caveats. So like the bombardier drone, the burster firefly, those are explosive skills. The seeker mines, those are explosives. The sticky bombs, those are explosives. So they all have little nuances on whether they accept these types of damages. Did anybody have a guess on which one of these skills takes weapon damage? Anybody have an idea there yet? Throw that question out there. Eclipse 187 says health damage is mostly for chungas, dogs, and NPCs when their armor drops. That's true. Hey Eclipse, but what about in PvP since you're doing that? I think that's what you meant by manhunts, PvP manhunts. But damage to health, is that helping? Does that help against shields, maybe? Renee Diddlier agrees. Yeah, it's really slow. The mortar turret I'm guessing we're talking about there. Yeah, it's pretty slow, but it hits really hard. Especially if you can get them. If you can get it with like a in combination with a riot foam, that's really helpful. If you got somebody running riot foam, or if you're doing it yourself, you stick the group and then hit them with the mortar, and they all go bye-bye. It's a good way to run. So the build you are seeing here is a classified build. This is just general gameplay footage of a classified build and a couple variations of it. In this classified build, we were able to achieve 360% crit damage on 6 skill tiers. The build is called Enough Said. So it is available to Texas Players Club members at the moment. That reminds me, if you didn't know, classified builds are secret builds made just for Texas Players Club. You have to be true or a hardcore Bandito member level to get access. So if you want to tap into these, you can get access today by making sure you're at least a true Bandito member level. Click the join button just below the video if you need to do that, or if you need to upgrade. So yeah, the mortar turret's really powerful. So it's accepting damage to armor, damage to health, and explosive damage and skill damage on top of that. So it doesn't take weapon damage on that skill. Neither do the ballistic skills. They don't take weapon damage either, of course. And that's probably pretty intuitive to you. And as far as the mortars go, I believe they don't take damage to targets out of cover. I might need to be corrected on that. I saw the results were actually pretty inconsistent. Some people were saying that it does, some people were saying that it doesn't. But you know what does take, for sure, damage to targets out of cover is the Oxidizer chem. So the Oxidizer chem takes damage to targets out of cover. It's actually the only confirmed skill to take damage to targets out of cover. So George Panathas asks, can you explain health damage? Yeah, so damage to health you can find on 3 pieces of Walker and Harris. You can find it on the named Yaw mask called the Hollow Man, or you can roll it to a weapon like an assault rifle. Comes with it as a secondary attribute. Or you can roll it on any of your other weapons as a secondary attribute as well. So basically, you have 3 types of enemies, just to start there. You have your elites, you have your veterans, and then you have your the reds, which we're just going to call it the non-elites. So Elites have armor and health. Veterans are the same. They have armor and health. And then the non-elites, the red guys, have just health. All right. So damage to health affects their health bar. But on the elites and veterans, on the gold and purple, you have to chew through their armor before that's going to kick in. On the reds, they're going to take that damage to health immediately because they're not wearing any armor. So you will notice when you're wearing damage to health that you're going to clear out the reds really quickly. Now, for the most part, in most gameplay, there are a lot of reds, right? I think it's pretty balanced in heroic on the first wave of control points, but once you get to the second wave of a control point, you're usually encountering almost 100% elites if you're playing on heroic. When it comes to legendary, it's not like that at all. There's actually less elites in legendary than there is. I think there's probably more veterans than anything. And then, so there's more veterans and non-elites than there are elites. So damage to health actually works really well in legendary, in my opinion. So the other things that accept health, and this is where health is really important, are robotics and proxies. So, and weak points. All of those accept health damage. They are health based. So like an enemy's turret, or even an enemy's shield, enemy's backpack weak point, or the chain on their gun. All of those are health damage as well. Even the dogs, the warhounds, and the tanks accept health damage. And which is also cool is the chungas, the legendary chungas, they accept health damage. So health damage is really helpful. I especially like it for legendary content because you'll find more enemies and robotics there to take advantage of it mostly. I hope that helps. But for the most part, it doesn't work with most of your skills, except for the mortar turret. But again, you still have to get through their armor before the health will kick in. Damage to health kicks in. It just depends on the enemy. If they have no armor, then you have nothing to worry about. So here's an interesting one. Like, what about the fire chem? Damage to armor, damage to targets out of cover. Does that work for the fire chem? Anybody know that answer? Kind of confusing. Eclipse 27 says, narrows it down to health damage is mostly for chungas, dogs, and NPCs when their armor drops. Yeah, that's pretty accurate. I would just add, except for the non-elites, the red guys, which they don't have any armor in the first place. But otherwise, yeah, that's pretty right. Ultra Mega Man says, I'd guess the hive because of bleed, and I think you're making a guess on that weapon damage. But that's not it. That's not it. Good guess, though. Ace Rock asks, what I play on? I play on the Xbox. I'm an Xbox player. And I only have time to put on one, to play through one platform. It'd be a lot to switch platforms. I don't know how people do that. To play more than one platform. But barely have time for this one. And just imagine you have to collect all that gear and all the build variations on multiple platforms. Oh my gosh. That would take forever. So, the fire chem, of course, takes skill damage. That's basically what's driving it. Especially, so when we're so there's two parts to the fire chem, right? There's the ignition of the fire, right? And then there's the status effect of the fire, which is the burn over time, damage over time from the burn. So that part of it's the status effect, but the initial burst, sort of the explosion, isn't actually an explosion according to the way the skill damage is hit, but they call that part the skill damage. So the initial burst of fire is where your skill damages are paying off, and then if you roll on status effects, that's going to pay off on the duration of the burn that remains after that initial burst. So damage to armor and damage to targets out of cover will affect the fire chem on the status effect portion of the damage. So if you're running the Contractor's Gloves and the Fox's Knee Prayers, then it's gonna boost the damage the enemies are taking when they're running around waving their arms, screaming to their mamas because they're on fire. But they're not gonna affect the big burst of damage up front. That's just pure skill damage. Does that make sense to you? So it will not take explosive damage on the fire chems and no weapon damage on the fire chems. And as far as damage to health goes, I haven't seen anything consistent there saying one way or the other. If anybody's tested that out thoroughly, I'd like to hear your guys' results, but I appreciate that. George Noble upgraded his membership to TuxedoBandido. Appreciate you, man. Welcome. And if you guys didn't know, I do have a special members only playlist on my channel on YouTube. So go there to get access to all the classified builds and members only live streams. So I'd also invite you to head over to our Discord channel as well. We have members only channels there where we talk about builds. And I do this on YouTube as well, but I also give shopping lists for upcoming builds I'm working on for classified builds or non-classified builds as well. But yeah, head over there. And also that's the best way to access me if you have questions about your builds, is to catch me on the and it comes with the perfect version of Vigilance, which gives you 25% additional weapon damage. So it is additive weapon damage, but they call it more weapon damage, I believe. And taking damage yourself disables this effect. Now, normally the non-perfect version disables it for 4 seconds. The perfect version disables it for 3 seconds. So it comes back pretty quickly. Really good talent. Used to be one of my favorites. You can get that only in the Dark Zone. The other place to get it is by farming named item caches. You'll probably have better luck getting it there, to be honest with you. And the reason why is because you might find it in the Dark Zone, but you're probably going to get a crappy rolled version of it. That's my experience in the Dark Zone altogether, is that when I go there to look for Dark Zone exclusive gear, when I do get it, I don't always get, well, I mostly get crappy rolls of it. But the named item caches has a minimum delivery in there, from what I can tell, which tends to average 75% or above when it comes to how well it's rolled. You know, like 75 percentile. And so if you farm named item caches, you're most likely, if you just get one, that one will end up being better rolled than any version you're probably going to pull out of the Dark Zone. And you know how the Dark Zone goes. As soon as you do find it, there's going to be a bunch of rogue agents right on your ass. They can sniff it when you get the gift. You smell funny, so they start chasing you. Anyways, good luck getting that one, buddy. That was like sort of my must-haves. I remember it was like one of the most sought-after gear pieces out of the Dark Zone that I had on my list when I was early on the game. I remember that. That's a really good question. Let's see. Dragon Miskovic asks, how about the Oxidizer chem and damage to armor? Are there any connections? Now, that's the thing about the Oxidizer. The Oxidizer itself goes after. So, here, let's just get this out of the way first. The Oxidizer chem is different than all the other chems in that this chem is skill damage based. All the other chems are status effect based. And then you have the healer chem as well, which is kind of outside of everything there. But Riot Foam and Fire chems are apply a status effect. Now the Riot Foam is pure status effect. The Fire chem, it has an initial burst of skill damage, and then after that it's all status effects. The Oxidizer is all skill damage. Damage to targets out of cover has been confirmed for the Oxidizer. Explosive damage doesn't work. Skill damage does work. Weapon damage doesn't work. As far as damage to armor, I don't have a confirmation on that, but I suspect that damage to armor would work on the Oxidizer chem because it itself goes after armor. So, which would be your blue ticks. red ticks are damage to health. Or is it white ticks? White ticks are damage to health. So the blue ticks are your damage to armor. So if you see the blue ticks, then yeah, it's affecting armor, and in that case, your damage to armor should apply there. Good question. Okay, let's get outside of skills for just a quick second and ask, let's talk about the Pestilence. So the Pestilence has, for a talent called Plague of the Outcasts, right? So the Plague of the Outcasts, basically, when you pump 50 rounds into the enemy, they get a debuff that basically kills them over time, and that's called Plague of the Outcast. And it's a weapon damage. It's based off of weapon damage. Okay, so that's why when you run a Pestilence build, for the most part, you want to spec purely into weapon damage. So you want to run, if possible, 6 red cores, right? Things like Vigilance will help damage to, or weapon damage, right? Vigilance adds more weapon damage. So you want to do things like that. Amplify damage too, so Glass Cannon would help, Spotter would help. That's all going to help that damage over time. So we're not talking about the hit of the bullets. That's okay, we get that. So, but we're talking about the damage over time, the little tick, 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 tick that's killing the enemy, even when you're not shooting at them. That's the Plague of the Outcast. So I wanted to add this in here, although it's not a skill, and it's not a status effect either. It's considered a debuff. So it's out of status effects and it's outside of skill damage. But damage to armor and damage to health and damage to targets out of cover, as well as weapon damage, all of those things will improve your Pestilence ticks. So if you run the Yaw mask, the Hollow Man mask, 3 pieces of Walker, the Contractor's gloves, and the Fox's prayers, if you can get that all onto a build, then you're going to be maximizing that. And then anything on top of that, you want weapon damage. So things like Vigilance, Glass Cannon, amplified weapon damage, right? Or just multiplicative or additive weapon damage talents. So all those are going to make those ticks stronger. So just something to keep in mind there. That's not a skill, but I thought that'd be helpful to know. And the same thing with the Vile Mask debuff. So the Vile Mask is not a status effect, right? What it applies a debuff. And that debuff is activated by status effects. So this is what's crazy. This is what's interesting about the Vile Mask. Damage to armor, damage to health, damage to targets out of cover, all impact the Vile Mask debuff. Explosive damage also buffs the Vile Mask debuff. The Vile Mask's debuff is based off of 2 things. How many status effects you have rolled onto your build attributes, and the power of your concussion grenade. And that's why explosive damage helps the Vile Mask debuff. Skill damage does not help. Weapon damage does not help the Vile Mask. So anyways, damage to armor, damage to health, damage to targets out of cover, and explosive damage will all help your Vile Mask debuff. I want to mention that because for many of your skill builds, you're probably running the Vile Mask, especially if you're running a status effect. So when you roll on your Contractor's gloves or 2 pieces of Walker or your Hollow Man mask, and let's say you're running the Fire Chem, right? Then that damage to armor, that multiplicative damage to armor, for example, is going to be multiplicative for your Fire Chem's fire and your Vile Mask's debuff, damage over time. Think about that. Damage to targets out of cover, same thing. So when the enemy's running around on fire, it's also going to double up its multiplicative damage on your Fire Chem as well as your Vile Mask. That's a really good use case right there. If you're going to be running a Fire Chem, maybe Eclipse type build, and you can manage to get damage to armor on it, you know, you're going to be getting damage to armor multiplying twice on the damage that you inflict, thanks to the Vile Mask. Think about that. So let's see what George Panathas has to say. Memento and 2 Foundry with red is a good choice, I think, for max DPS builds. Greens will be applied to mask and holster, or you should suggest something else. See, greens would be applied. I'm not sure what you mean by greens would be applied to mask. Greens as in repair skills, or I'm not sure what you mean by greens there. Eclipse did confirm that he made a hybrid with the Oxidizer using the Fox's Prayer, Contractor's Gloves, Fenner's Chest, and Obliterate, and he says it rips. Yeah, I would imagine it would. That sounds really powerful. Biko says membership is totally worth it. Aw, thanks, man. Appreciate you saying that. So, I had a question earlier, if you guys didn't catch it. And, okay, I see what you're saying there. Sorry, real quick. Foundry to mask and holster. George is saying. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me. Foundry to mask and holster. I mean, it just depends on if you're running a shield or not. But it looks like you're going for just a pure DPS build and going for that, just greater amounts of armor. All red. Oh, okay, I see what you're doing. Yeah, you're looking at that build that I just put out, that declassified build where I show you how to get 1 million in damage and still have 1 million in armor, running 6 red weapon damage tiers. Cores, that is. So yeah, if you guys didn't know, I put out it was a classified build. I recently declassified it, but it was a build where we found a way to get 1 million in armor, but not lose a single weapon damage core. So you still get 6 weapon damage cores with 1 million armor. So it's like having all your armor and your weapon damage too, having your cake and eat it too, sort of concept. So weapon damage, we asked the question on what skill accepts weapon damage, kind of secretly accepts weapon damage. And I'll give you the answer right now. It's sticky bombs. So sticky bombs. So you know when you hit, so when you hit the enemy with the sticky bomb, that initial impact is actually weapon damage. It's not skill damage. It's not explosive damage. It's not a status effect. The impact of the sticky itself is actually considered weapon damage. I don't know if you knew that. What happens after that is a variable. So if it's fire, then you're gonna have skill damage, and then you're gonna have status effect from the fire. If it's the explosive, then you're gonna have skill damage and explosive damage. So, thought that was interesting. So, damage to armor, does it work for the bleed seeker mine, which I believe is called the explosive seeker mine, and that's the one that when it's just the single one that you throw out, and when it does blow up, it applies bleed. So damage to armor, does it affect that? So the build you guys are watching here in the gameplay footage, again, is a new classified build that just dropped, and we were able to achieve 360% crit damage on 6 skill tiers, and we're calling it Enough Said, because with those statistics, there's not much else to say about the build. 360% crit damage on 6 skill tiers. It's a lot of fun. The idea is to try to balance our weapon with our skill damage, because the skills usually put out so much damage they kind of overshadow or marginalize the weapon damage that you put out. So our goal when making these hybrid builds is try to make that weapon damage as strong as the skills are. So a lot of fun. Okay, so if you're not Players Club member, that's a good reason to join. And for those of you that don't know, classified builds are secret builds made just for Texas Players Club, true and hardcore Bandito members. And you can become a member by clicking the join button below. So, the Explosive Seeker does accept damage to armor. I think Eclipse just got that right. Does I believe it does do damage to armor, he says. I've been hit by it and hit with it. And yeah. And so, but it's the bleed part that is accepting the damage to armor. So you have the explosion damage, so it is doing that as well, which is also skill damage. You can put those two things together for that one. And then the bleed is accepting that damage to armor. And the Fire Seeker, so anything basically with bleed and fire are going to take that damage to armor. So there's also the Burster Seeker. I think it's called the Burster, right? I'm not sure what it's called now. Think about it. I don't think it's called the Burster. The one that blows up and then it catches them on fire. I forget what that's called. But that's Seeker Mine. Also accepts damage to armor, and it's because of the status effect. That's the portion that accepts damage to armor. So it's damage over time that is accepting the damage to armor on that. And same with the Cluster Seeker, which is an explosive one. That one does not apply a bleed, but it does accept damage to armor as well. And I believe that one also does damage to targets out of cover. Ace Rock says, how did you learn so much about this game? Oh man, just by playing, listening, playing, listening, trying, testing, and research. A lot of research. Do a lot of research too. So, but mostly just playing around. I think, as you know, you got to play and you got to test things and moving parts around, and over time, all that information just sort of sticks with you. It stuck with me, but. Things always change too, like on this particular subject. You know, Airburster Seeker, thanks Biko, appreciate that, man. Clips, you too, and Michael. Airburster, that's what we call that Fire Seeker. But yeah, this is what you got to watch out with all of this information. It could change at any time. It's constantly tested on. Every time they do a title update, particularly, these things can change. They might be fixing something that's not working correctly, or modifying something, you know, because maybe they're introducing a new skill, and then for consistency's sake, they might need to change how other skills are working as well. Or maybe it's a bug that causes one of these things to change. But that's why it is such a confusing subject, is because the devs haven't been consistently delivering on any of these. And so when it comes to, no matter how experienced you are in the Division 2, this is a particular topic that's never really nailed down because it's fluid and it's really difficult to test on. I think that we'd have, if the White House wasn't so buggy in there, I think we'd probably have a better idea of what does and what doesn't work with each skill. But because we have to test in the open world, with all the variables that happen out there, it's really difficult and inconsistent. And then on top of that, all the title updates change things. And then there's always a bug in this game that changes something. And so you'll see posts in Reddit, if you look up at this topic, where people are saying, yeah, confirm damage to target out of cover works for whatever. And then you'll see that person come back and be like, never mind. I tested it again and I got different numbers, and so I don't understand why it's not being consistent. So you'll see that constantly, and so you have to be careful on what information you're sucking up on this particular subject. So that's why some of these things I'm not, you know, I guess marking in stone whether that be the case of the damage applying or not applying, just because it's just not conclusive enough with all the testing out there. But, I mean, it'd be really nice if they just gave us a guide to this stuff, right? Just a simple go-to sheet. Why not, right? I don't see why they don't do that. Why don't we just have a simple spreadsheet that says damage to armor works on all of these skills? You know, it doesn't do that. Why can't they do that? Why wouldn't they do that? Why wouldn't a dev do that? Help the player base out, giving them some knowledge. And don't you think it's kind of weird that they could just kind of leave these things for us to figure out and get wrong half the time? When they could just give us a simple guide on what works and what doesn't. I get discovery is a lot of what makes this game interesting, so I'm not saying take that out of it, but I think like this is just, it seems kind of basic enough to where it should just be listed or stated in the skill itself, you know. I don't know. What are you guys' opinions on that? Love to hear your thoughts. So let me rephrase it this way: things like damage to armor and damage to health, should it be listed in the skill, whether that these damage modifiers are accepted with the skill, or should we be left to our own demise to figure it out? What do you guys think? Ace Rock says need to go to D2 school. Yep. We call it the School of Tuxology. So if you join my Discord, you can attend classes immediately. And the cool thing is that we waived all tuition costs. So there's no tuition fees to join the School of Tuxology. So if you're interested in learning how to create builds and all the nuances around the game, then you should definitely join our Discord. That's the place to be. And this Discord is popping, guys. It's not a dead Discord. Great conversations happening there. It's alive, very much alive. Also, that reminds me, for anyone looking for like-minded peeps, check out the Tux clans. The clans are popping thanks to some great leaders and banditos. So if you want to get involved, be sure to hit us up on Discord. That's the best place to meet up with the clan members and capitans. Steven Johnson says, when it comes to getting to know which damages work and which ones don't, says it's fluid and it also keeps you playing the game to figure it out. Yeah, totally. But I do wish it was just consistent. You know what I mean? The thing is that it changes. Like damage to targets out of cover specifically. Like here's a comment that I've been seeing a lot in comments on Reddit, is that damage to, like for the damage to targets out of cover and damage to armor, you hear people saying, well, you should have a shotgun in hand because of damage to armor when you're deploying your skills, so that damage to armor applies to the skills. What do you guys think about that? I say that's incorrect. Your weapon, damage to armor on your weapon is only going to apply to the damage that your weapon inflicts. That's how I know it. That's how it. But does anybody experience different? Does anybody think different on that? Am I wrong there? So we're talking about like the secondary attributes or the core attributes on your assault rifle, for example. So your assault rifle has assault rifle damage, right? And then it has health damage right below that, right? And then, you know, for your third attribute, you can roll damage to armor if you want to. So what some people are suggesting is that if just by having your weapon equipped in your hand, that when you deploy your, let's say your Oxidizer chem, or your fire chem, or your turret, your mortar turret, that you should be getting that damage to armor and damage to health that your weapon has rolled on it. And then if you switch to a different weapon that doesn't have damage to armor and damage to health, then you're going to lose those multiplicative damage buffs that you would have otherwise had with the assault rifle in your hand. So, does that sound right to you? That doesn't sound right to me, to be frank. I think that you need to have that your weapon only applies to damage that your weapon applies, the buffs on it, the attributes on it. So, that's how I know it to work. But, good to know what you guys think. Is that it? Asks or states, I thought damage to armor, damage to health was always global. I've never tested to prove it. Yeah, no, it's definitely not global. This, if I'm interpreting what you mean by global. But yeah, there's a lot of skills. I mean, there's one takeaway that I want you guys to walk away with here. This is the most important one for me. Is that your assault turret, your striker drone, and your sniper turrets do not accept any of the multiplicative damages that are available in the game. So damage to armor, damage to health, damage to targets out of cover do not work for your turret drone and sniper turret. And as far as I know, the skill that accepts the most multiplicative damage is the Mortar turret. That accepts damage to armor, damage to health, and damage to targets out of cover. Explosive damage, skill damage. So the Mortar turrets, that's why the Mortar turret always feels so damn powerful. So, but especially on damage to armor, the Mortar turret and damage to armor, that's probably the thing that you want to focus on the most there. That's pretty cool. So you stack that on top of your explosive damage, on top of your skill damage, and you got a lot going on with that Mortar turret. But yeah, so yeah, is that it? For your question, yeah. The biggest thing I want you to take away is that your assault turret and your drone and your sniper turret don't accept any of the multiplicative damages. And there are a lot of people putting together builds out there, hybrid builds, where they're using Fox's Prayer and Contractor's Gloves and rolling skill damage on that, which is perfectly fine. So I'm not saying don't do that, but just don't expect those multiplicative damages to be applying to your skills. They're just being applied to your weapons, which is in its own not a bad thing, maybe a great thing to have, depending on how the numbers pan out. So Michael Myers asks, curious about the Bombardier drone. Never use it because the targeting is difficult, but curious about it, he states. Yeah, you said it, you couldn't have said it any better. That's exactly how I feel about it. But it basically lines up with the Mortar turret, so it does everything that the Mortar turret does. Damage to armor, damage to health. That also applies to the Bombardier. That was confirmed on Reddit. So also explosive damage and skill damage. Damage to targets out of cover for the Mortar turret and the Bombardier. The results are inconsistent. So you will see people saying that it does work and that it does not work. So for whatever it's worth. I can scan back here and see if I missed anybody's comments and questions, because there were quite a few. Fat Cat, I did miss yours. Hey, welcome, brother, if you're still on. The Tux is now live. He gives us the tools to survive. Your new build will hit like a truck. Hit subscribe. It's only $1. I'm no Mac Mike, so smash that like. Damn, brother, I'm going to copy that down. That's really good. I'm going to start saying that and all as I open up the stream. That's really good. That's really good. Appreciate the rhymes. He's also in my clan. Going back, actually, Corey Leith dropped a comment. I don't know if you're still on, Corey, but if you are here, I will answer your question because it was actually a pretty good one. Can you teach us if it's better to have 3 crit chance mods on your skill damage build or 3 headshot mods? So headshots are multiplicative damage. It didn't used to be that way. It used to be additive, and then the devs changed that. I believe that was in TU10. And I don't think they reverted that. So I don't think they even mentioned anything about it. I think it was just something that just turned out to change. But so 3 crit chance versus 3 headshot. Well, I guess crit chance is going to ultimately be worth it if you have crit damage already on your skill build. Again, crit chance is, in my opinion, is going to be more useful, assuming there's crit damage also in your build, because headshots are more situational, right? You got to land that actual headshot for it to count, where crits are going to be less situational because the crits are going to work on the headshots as well as the body shots. So they will be applied to your damage more often based off of that. So also, the other way to look at it, this is on the other side of the coin, I guess, is that headshots, when you do land them, you're going to get that maximum amount of damage 100% of the time. Where when you do land your crits, or when you do land regular headshot, or regular shots, we'll say, you're only going to get that crit chance, assuming you're maxed out, at best, 60% of the time. So, but when it comes for general builds, the 60% of the time is going to pay off more because you're going to have a rate of fire that makes sense for that. Any rate of fire over probably, I don't know, 500 would make sense for that. But for a sniper build, for example, in my opinion, I prefer to go with the headshots, go all in on headshots and not go in on crits. Even if you go with the crit chance build, right? Max crit chance and max crit damage, and then headshots on top of that. You might get a higher value if you do crit, but you got to remember that each round only has a 60% chance of critting. Look at it this way. It's got a 40% chance of not critting, right? And when it comes to a sniper build, you only have one bullet, one shot. You don't have a mag. I mean, you do have a mag on your gun, but it's not the mag that matters. It is, you have one shot, one kill. That is your goal. One shot, one kill is your goal, right? And you need to guarantee you're putting out the maximum amount of damage on that one shot. You don't want a 40% chance of not getting maximum damage on that shot. That's the way I look at it. So on sniper builds, I like to go all in on headshot damage and not crits. Now, if I could have both, I would. But for the most part, I like to land over at least 290% headshot damage, because that's going to give me the one-shot headshot kills on those elites, and that's what I'm looking for. And non-elites, of course. Anyways, I hope that helps. Crit chance. Short answer. Go crit chance. Headshots are too situational. Dispatch says, most of the skills are hard to aim. I think it's one of the things they really could have done more work on. Yeah, I agree. The mortar turret, that's my big turnoff there. It's just like, it's hard to aim, and with the amount that the enemies dodge and duck and roll, I mean, you can use like, 3 rounds on a single NPC because he's tucking and rolling so much that he's only taking splash damage and not direct skill damage. So, yeah, totally agree with that. One of my favorites is actually the sticky bomb. I don't know if you guys know that there's a quick release on it. Like if you double tap your bumper, if it's equipped to your right bumper, for example, as long as you just aim your cursor, like you might be shooting with your assault rifle, and if your cursor is on the mark, if your reticle is on the mark, you can double tap your skill button, and it'll quick fire the sticky bomb, kind of like a quick draw, like in the Western days with a revolver. And you nail the target that way. Even if they're across the map, they can be really far away. You can get them right in the face with that thing. One of my favorite skills to use. Hard to aim otherwise, but I'll nail most of my targets that way, actually, using the quick fire way, just because it's so fast. As long as you have your reticle lined up, it's not 100% guaranteed, but it's you got a good chance of landing. Good. Biko asks, are members going to make it on an early look at the Game Over 2 with enough likes? That is a good question. Let me take a look. Let me drop that link here, actually. So, give me a second here and let me pull up this link. So, do you guys know the Game Over build? That's what he's talking about. So, God, it's been a good month now, but a while back I put out a build called Game Over, okay? And Game Over uses 4 pieces of Foundry, and I hacked that Foundry set into a hybrid skill build and rolled 6 skill tiers on it and did a bunch of other fun stuff. So ended up being an amazing build. It was so good I basically threw my controller across the room and said Game Over, and that's why I ended up dubbing it the Game Over build. And so it's also called Balls Out. So it's actually called the Balls Out Game Over build. Anyways, fantastic build. It is a community fave. So I'm putting the link here right now. So look in the feed. Okay. So I just put a link to the post. So if you want early access to Game Over, then we need to get these likes up. So everybody on this post needs to hit that link and just give that post. Everybody in the stream needs to hit that link and just give that post a like. All right, that's all we need you to do. We're trying to drive those numbers up. Now the original goal was 300. We want 300 likes. And it looks like we're on our way there, but we're not. We're at 150 likes. So give me the 300 likes, and then I will. Basically, what I'm going to do is bump up this video production, because I got a content calendar here. You guys don't even have an idea of how many builds I'm working on. I'm basically working on, like, right now I think 6 builds at the same time. So, but Game Over Part 2 I just discovered. I'm almost done with the build. I still need to do a little bit more tweaking, but just mostly fine tuning more than anything. But this build is almost done, and it hits harder than Game Over Part 1, and it has more survivability than Game Over Part 1. So this one's called, this is going to be Game Over Part 2, Part 2, as I say. But yeah, it's pretty incredible. I realized how good it was. I knew it was going to be good even before I built it, when I came up with the idea, and then when I slapped a version of it together last week, and I ran one control point with it, and I was like, yep. I could tell immediately it was gonna hit, and be stronger than the first version. So I want to get this. So anyways, my proposal is to get you guys an early look on it. All members. So, but you do have to be a member to get the early look. So head over to there and just hit the like on that, and then we will get that going. And then, so basically, I have a few other builds that are in line to come out first. So it won't be an official release. It's gonna be like a premiere, like an early look, kind of like they do with movies. And so we're gonna do that, give you guys a good early look at it, and then I'll also provide a shopping list so that you guys can get started building on it. And then when the official release comes, you can see how where I landed, but you will be prepared to make your tweaks to your build if you see it as a direction you want to go. So that's sort of the idea here. What up, Cole Boy? Cole Boy in the house. What's up, brother? Welcome. Late night with Tux. And I know you're out in the Midwest. I think you're Ohio, right? Time. So, damn, boy, hitting it up late. I see you've been doing that Battlefield, man. You had early access. It looks like you signed up for that. So, what do you think of it? What do you think of it? You like it? Because I'm going down that road too. I'm going to start with just the November 19th release, or the next Friday one. But on my second channel, I'll be streaming a little bit of that too. I wish we were on the same platform. Coldboy, I believe, is on PC, but I'm on Xbox, so we're not on the same platform. Otherwise, I'd be rolling with you, brother. Oh, that sucks. I wish we were rolling together. We could be slaying. So if you guys don't know, Coldboy has been running content for the Division 2 for many, many years now. He does it all. The stuff that I love that he does, especially, is the PvP stuff. He does some really good things there. He also highlights PvP plays of the week from the community. So if you got any of those, make sure you submit to him, and we get those up. But recently, what we're talking about is he's also expanded his coverage to go as far out as Battlefield 2042, which is the new game that just released from those guys. And yeah, so he I believe just started doing that this last week, and he's loving it. Oh, and he's telling us Battlefield is crossplay, so we will get to grind together. Love that, man. We got to do that for sure. I'm pumped now. Pumped now. Yeah, and just like him, I think we're all waiting for new Division 2 content. And just to mention that again, in case you guys don't follow the news super closely, that we have new content, as stated by the devs, dropping in February of 2022. So about 3 months out. And I believe they're going to give us the official reveal in January. And between now and then, they're just going to be dropping basically articles on a monthly basis, kind of give us some insight on what they're working on. Most recently, they've given us news on specializations and that they were going to be modifying the way those things work, and it's actually pretty exciting. I think that's going to be a good move because it's sort of kind of dull the way specializations are. You either equip it or you don't, and that's all you get. That's all you got. So let's see what George Peppa says here. When you have Contractor's Gloves and Fox's Praise on an AR, PvE, PvP build, and one of your ARs is 12x scope for long distances, what's the best third attribute on the weapon headshot damage to armor out of cover? To armor out attribute on the weapon headshot damage to armor out of cover. I think what you're asking is what attribute do you put on that extra slot? Damage to armor, damage to health, or damage to targets out of cover. That's kind of an age-old argument, but I think it's been settled. And so I want to say it's an opinion, but it's sort of not. But damage to targets out of cover has been deemed more applicable and more useful than damage to armor. And somebody went as far, I was actually just reading today, to give it a statistic that it was like damage to armor ends up being like 60% of the time it's applicable, and damage to targets out of cover is 80% of the time it's applicable, based on what enemies you're encountering and how often they're in and out of cover. But anyways, I think that what you would find on your own research is that the community agrees that damage to targets out of cover is the best in slot for your weapon's secondary attribute. So thanks for swinging by, Cold Boy. Appreciate it, man. We'll catch you on the other side, and definitely make arrangements to hook up with you on Battlefield when I get rolling on that. Looking forward to it. Night, night, bro. So, I don't know if you got your answer there, Renee, but what exotic weapons would you recommend for DZ or PvP? Oh, gosh, good question. You know, so many people run to kind of the same old things, but one is I like the sticky, the EMP sticky, because now it is difficult to aim, so that's the downside. You know, and I know like you can panic fire that thing and then you miss, and then you gotta wait 27 seconds for it to come back. But if you get good at aiming it, and some say you might find best luck by aiming it at sort of the ground right in front of your target, but you'll disable their shield, and that's what they're hiding behind. That's what they're all hiding behind. They're all hiding behind the shield. Take that away, and then you know it's mano y mano right there, right? So, yeah. So I really like that one for that reason. I like the striker drone because that does distract your enemy. They do have the tendency to start firing at it, but I do notice you will encounter guys that are just the opposite, and they'll just come straight for you and kill you and ignore the drone damage they're taking. But a lot of guys use the bleed is really popular, the stinger hive, to push people back, and that one does serve a great purpose, and it does slow them down. There's that animation that makes them slower, which makes them easier for you to kill. So that's also a good one. And then of course the shield is a skill and really popular, but not my favorite. But I do like the decoy. God, there's a lot of answers I got here for you. So it totally just depends. The decoy is great because it hides your nameplate so that you're harder to discover. The scanner pulse is probably the most useful because it lets you know where the enemies are in relation to you. so there's less surprise attacks on you, and you can hopefully surprise attack them. I think that's probably the most useful for the DZ, is just knowing where your enemy is positioned in relation to you is really helpful in your survivability. So yeah, anyways, that's a lot of answers for your question, but hopefully one of those resonates with you. And Eclipse says, yeah, it depends on your build too. Totally agree. But I would say, yeah, anyways, for defense, let's just talk defense, just narrow it down to that. I would say the decoy and the scanner pulse are really, really helpful to DZ. So even when you're up close and personal, that decoy, you know, when you're like hiding behind cover and the guy's on the other side of that cover, you can drop your decoy and then roll around to him, and he's not going to know where you are exactly. The Eclipse follows it up for exotics. Yeah, good. Lady Death, Eagle Bearer, Pesty, Nemesis. As far as exotics, yeah. I'd agree with that. Excuse me. Yeah, Lady Death is really popular in there. Yeah, so is the Eagle Bearer. I personally, when I go in there, I don't use either of those. I don't use the Pesty either. I just don't like the rate of fire on that. And then people come up close to you, and if they catch you in a reload, I mean, you're dead. So I do like the Nemesis though in there. I've been toying around with that. What other exotic do I like in there as far as a weapon? Let me think. God, I don't know. I guess that would be, you know, I find myself when it comes to assault rifles using something like the Police M4 or whatever. I like to get those headshots in, and it's got a nice little handling on it. So George Panthos says on his build he uses assault rifles, I'm guessing. Headshots on his third attribute. So yeah, that's interesting. Gene asks a good question here. Have you figured out how they are using the shotgun to tap legendary chungas in the new DUA speedrun record? I'm gonna venture a guess, Gene, but I haven't actually seen that. I actually think you gave me a recommendation to check that out, maybe in the last stream or one of our conversations, but I haven't had the opportunity to do that, but I'm going to. Thanks for reminding me. I appreciate the heads up on that, if that was you. But I've been seeing some content creators also put out headshot shotgun builds. So basically using shotguns like the Marine Super 90 or the M870, but they're running it with headshot damage instead of crits for the same reasons that we talked about earlier, which are headshot damage is 100% of the time, where crits are going to be 60% of the time. And then also for shotgun builds, because you are limited on slots in general, it's easier to roll on more headshot damage because you don't need to run crit chance and crit damage combined to get the damage. You only need the one attribute, which frees your space up for other things like handling or whatever. So my guess is they're using the Headhunter on a shotgun, and you know, think about it. So Headhunter, going off of the top of my mind, but you know, basically it stacks the damage from one headshot kill to the next, and headshot kills aren't that hard to get with shotguns because you're getting right up in their face, so it's pretty easy to aim at their head and land that shot. Not a guarantee, but pretty easy. So and when you stack those headshot kills, you can get up to 1,200% of your damage of that last killed enemy. So I think what they're doing, again, this is me venturing to guess without watching those videos, is they're probably getting 1, 2, 3 headshot kills, getting maximum damage from Headhunter, and then applying that final that kill shot aggro, and then using an extra round just to finish him off, would be my guess. The question that I would have is the other player playing a role? One is, does he riot foam him to hold him still, or does he plug in the Achilles pulse? Is he running future initiative to give him an additional weapon damage? Are they running opportunistic on the backpack? Probably yes. You know what I mean? So, all good questions. Assuming they're using the shotgun to actually do it. Because I've also seen people do it with the Dodge City holster and Headhunter. So using your marksman rifle to get your headhunters stacked up, and then for the kill shot, you whip out your pistol and shoot the aggro, and you'll get the Dodge City holster stacks on top of the headhunter stacks. So it ends up being a big mega time kill shot. But I think you want to land a headshot with that one. So anyways, good question. Really good question. But that's my guess at it. Paul Jaeger the Guardian. What's up, Paul? Glad you made it. Have you been here the whole time, or are you just jumping in? How do you manage your stash inventory with all these builds? I don't. I'm a bad example. I'm basically always full. So, and that's because, like for this last build, the 360% crit damage on 6 skill tiers, the build we call Enough Said, there were so many different ways to run that build, right? That I was collecting pieces. You know, I would have 3 or 4 variations for the build, pieces for the build for just the mask, right? So I'd have 3 or 4 options for the mask, 3 or 4 options for the gloves, the backpack, the knees, the holster, and the chest. And so, so for a single build I'm working on, that ends up being, 6 times, let's just say 3 pieces each. That's 18 pieces I'm holding on my back in my backpack inventory just for a single build I'm working on. And then I'm working on 5 builds in addition to that. So you can imagine that's how my backpack stays full all the time. So then with everything else, I'll create a build and I'll like it, and then I'll stash away all those things. So it just becomes a nightmare. I'm always full. But yeah, at the very least, I actually have 3 characters that are all filled up, and I've been meaning to do a 4th, but I've just kind of been squeaking by. But I know the results will be the same once I get the 4th. I'll fill that character up and and do whatever. And recently, I ended up cashing in on all my exotics. So I had one of my characters that was holding 150 exotics. So multiple of each version, right? And then I finally consolidated them, which cost me everything in resources. And I put out a video of that process. So Sith Broken, welcome to Hardcore Bandido, Texas Players Club. Appreciate you, man. Glad to have you on board, especially as a Hardcore Bandido member. Appreciate your support. So, and Mark Brittle, welcome as a Texational supporter. Welcome, brother. All right, back to backs. I love the love. Keep it coming. So for you guys that just joined Texas Players Club, you should know that we have a playlist for members only, and it's on my channel. So there's a members only playlist, and it's called Members Only Playlist. So you can check that one out, and there you will find all the classified builds as well as members only live streams that I've done. And in the future, when I post something that is members only, it will go there as well. You're also going to get shopping lists for future builds that I'm working on as we get close to those builds release dates. I'll be giving you a heads up. And of course, exclusive premieres and more classified builds and exclusive content for you. And for those of you that don't know, classified builds are secret builds made just for Texas Players Club True and Hardcore Bandido member levels. So if you want to tap into these, you can get access today by making sure you're at least a true Bandido member level. So click the join button below this video if you need to do that. But we love you having you on board. And also, members, we do have a channel for members only on my Discord. First of all, I invite everybody to come over to the Discord because our Discord is alive and it's pumping. Great conversations going for those who are build enthusiasts especially. And also the clans are bumping. So we have multiple clans going now for each of the platforms. We still need to get the Xbox One up and going, but if you're a PlayStation and PC clan or player, then our clans you should definitely check out. So best place to connect with the clan leaders is also on my Discord. We have channels for the clans as well. But Sith Broken says, I love your builds and you are definitely worth supporting. Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that. Really do. Really do. Super nice of you. Eclipse 187 says, I hope they fix Summit. Running solo, the gear drops are far and few between. I totally agree, man. Yeah, so here's a tip, guys, especially if you're new. When it comes to farming, you know, looking for your gear, which you're probably doing a lot if you're following my channel because I'm putting out so many builds. But, you know, the open world just does so much better, you know, farming control points. You go fast, not a lot of nonsense in between. You know, I like doing the East Mall, for example, or the Southwest, because there's minimal running between control points and you can fast travel to some control points if you need to. Like, for example, I'll do Sinkhole, I'll run over to Solar, and then I'll fast travel to Capitol Building and then do the crash site. So that way I can do 3 control points in like, you know, 15, 20 minutes maybe. Really fast, right? And then the Southwest is the same thing. I do the Hope. So I fast travel to whatever that mission is down there. I can't remember now. It's the Air and Space Museum, I think. I fast travel there. Then I run over to Hope. And then I fast travel to, I think it's called the Castle, which is the old settlement that was destroyed. And then I just go half a block over to Choke. Anyways, that's where I like to farm. So if your gear lines up, if you see like you're farming for Bellstone, if you see Bellstone in the open world, in one of the zones you like to farm, then just take that advantage and just farm. Get every possible Bellstone variation that your heart desires and just take advantage, and you're going to save yourself a lot of time in the future. But when I have to, the map sometimes sucks, right? Sometimes you go down to the map and you're like, it just sucks. There's just nothing on the map. Like, oh, we got backpack mods, and we got gear set mods, and then we got like, you know, something stupid, you know, whatever. And so I'm like, I guess I'm going to the Summit, which isn't horrible. I know some people really hate the Summit. I don't really hate the Summit. Actually, when I look to group play, the Summit is where I do it. I don't group play on missions or control points unless it's with my clan. Or it's legendary. The only time I group play in Washington, D.C. is when I'm doing legendary, basically. And then if I'm doing control points, it's just because I'm hanging with some clan members. But if I'm group playing with randoms, I do that in the Summit. And then I'm usually only in the Summit because I'm either tired of playing solo or the map sucks. And so I have to go to the Summit. And like what he's saying, I think Eclipse, yeah, like what Eclipse is saying is it's like when you run solo in the Summit, you don't get that many drops. You know, sometimes I do multiple floors and be like, did I get 1 drop? I just cleared 2 floors. Did I even get 1 drop? And then you get something shitty and you're like, oh god, this isn't worth it. So yeah, when I do the Summit, I do like to play in group. I do. But I prefer to play solo a lot because when it comes to testing builds, working on a build, you go faster. And so I can go fast travel to the base of operations or the lobby or whatever, make a quick change on my build, then get back into the fight, and then I'll be like, oh, you know, I need more power, and then go back, you know, to my stash, make a quick change in my build, or re-roll something, and then go back into the fight, whatever. So that's why I like to play solos, because when I'm optimizing a build, I can do it faster, instead of feeling obligated to stick with the crew. So anyways, I'm with you there, bro. But yeah, my recommendation, if you're going Summit, group it up. So it does do a little bit better. And also the upper floors Eclipse. So you know what, you should at least group up until you get to maybe over floor 60. I find that the gear gets better over floor 60. And you know why I think that is? Here's a little insider tip. So originally when they released the Summit, it was structured differently. The bottom floor used to be like normal mode or whatever, and the top 20 floors used to be legendary mode. And then they changed that later, but I don't think they changed the way the loot allocation works as far as that effect goes. So, of course, Legendary is going to give you better loot than normal floors would be. So, I think what's happened is that although they've made it so that you can choose whatever your map difficulty is, that the higher you go, the better quality of loot's that you're gonna get because of that old system. And also, there's some thing that they did mention that the enemy difficulty is going to scale a little bit more. You're gonna encounter more captains, I guess what they call it, like lieutenants or whatever, and also more unusual fire teams in the upper floors than you would in the bottom floors, and that's also going to impact your loot, I guess. But anyways, so yeah, the upper floors you are going to have better luck. You've probably noticed that when you're on floor 70, you're getting like a lot more triple god rolls, or you know, better rolls than you are in the lower floors. So you probably noticed that. So that's a good tip. K Zang, welcome K. Am I saying your name right? Key? Is it Key or K? Hey Tux, your content is wild and interesting. Do you know why base damage fluctuates on raid bosses, for example? Sometimes I hit for 108 million headshots, sometimes barely 80 million on the same build. There's a lot of variables to that, to be honest with you. I haven't personally noticed anything out of the usual, but I have been raiding a lot lately. I used to raid a ton. And the best answer, I mean, I'd assume that you've already taken this out of the equation, but the best answer I could give you is your team. So your team is bringing a lot of buffs, and then some of those buffs actually stack on top of each other. So which is it the... I think it's Survivalist as an example. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's Survivalist that gives your team more damage to targets out of cover. That's correct, right? And so, just assuming that that's right, when two of your teammates are running that, I believe it stacks that damage. I think it is, and I think it caps at two teammates that are running that. But going off of memory, so I can't recall if that's 100% the case. But either way, if one of your teammates, just keep it simple, if one of your teammates is wearing damage, is wearing Survivalist, then your build just got stronger. If one of your teammates is wearing Future Initiative, then they're buffing your weapon damage and your skill damage also. So, I mean, looking at your numbers going from 80 to 108 million headshots, that wouldn't surprise me if you're getting like all these damage to targets out of cover buffs, or even flat out damage buffs from Future Initiative and Overwatch, and maybe somebody else is hitting with Opportunistic, and I can see you getting up there pretty easily. But if you're taking that out of the equation and you're saying, well, I've accounted for that already, and it's not, I'm saying besides my team buffs, but I don't know if you could do that. Kai, if that's how I'm saying your name, I don't know if you can take out your team modifiers out of the equation to determine why your headshot damage is going up or down, because your team is fluctuating. There's no way, I mean, there's a way, but I very much doubt that your team's builds are consistent enough for you to be able to measure up your damage from one raid to the next. I mean, because your team is probably constantly changing their builds. Even if everybody's like relatively static on their builds, they still change their builds. Right? They might be running Gunner instead of Survivalist, or maybe they're running Technician and you're getting a different buff. Or maybe somebody's running Opportunistic last time they played, and this time they're not running Opportunistic, whatever. But yeah, I mean, that's what I can think of, and that's probably the case. It'd be really hard to evaluate that. It'd be really hard to say, well, it can't be my team, unless your team runs the same build every single time and you're able to test based off of that. You have the same team members running the same build. That'd be the only way to discount your team's buffs into that from that equation. But so assuming you haven't done that and you can't do that, then I would say, yeah, it's definitely your team buffs. Eclipse 187 says, yep, I did the same thing today. Took one look at the map and said, nope, summit. Ultra Mega Man out of Australia says, I used to hate the summit. I love it now. Yeah, I don't hate it or love it. I just sort of have it. Like I say always, I wish I had Windows. I would love it more. But Michael Myers says, I would rather farm the Summit than Warlords on New York map. Yeah, you know what? I never go to New York. I hate New York. I hate New York. It's small. It's just like, I don't like the enemies you face either. The cleaners and the Rikers are a pain in the ass because they're not challenging to fight, but they're extra tanky, so they're kind of annoying to fight. They're really annoying because they're tanky, but not challenging. So it's just like you're just there, offloading a lot of ammo, just wasting time. So it just makes it feel like a big waste of time. They're not fun to fight. You know, like the hyenas are kind of fun to fight, right? They're kind of fun because they're wild. And they have the sniper turret. They got the tank guy. The shield guy, right? Then they got the rushers. And so you got a kind of a variety of elements to deal with. And then they also have the drone ladies that send up the little RC cars at you too, right? And every now and again you'll come across a sniper, but and then you have the outcasts, and they're kind of almost like the Rikers, except they deal with a lot more fire, right? They got the fire grenades or whatever. So the outcasts are cool. You see me fighting them right now, and I use to blow up their grenade satchels, catch them on fire, so that's a good way to deal with them. But they also have that, beef jerky Budweiser drinking fool that comes at you. He's just their grunt, basically, holding an assault rifle, and he's like really tanky, right? That's his special powers, that he's just tanky, and he's really annoying to deal with. He's the guy that I hate to deal with when I'm playing the outcasts, because it's like, man, you're tanky, and you take a lot of bullets. And you're not doesn't look like he's wearing any armor, right? He's just wearing like a jacket, some jeans. He's the one that kicks you in the chest sometimes. He's like the Chuck Norris of Outcast enemies. Anyways. Ultra Mega Man, yeah. I think that's true. I think the answer is true. He asks, if two people are wearing True Patriot, is it multiplicative in any way? I believe those do stack on each other. Last I remember, those do stack on each other. I haven't tested recently, but it was well known to stack on each other. Also with Negotiator's Dilemma, I believe, was stacking on each other too. So I guess, let me make sure I'm saying that right. I think the way it worked was, like, so if you're running True Patriot and so is your friend, like, if you put on the first flag, he can put on the second flag, and then you could throw on the third flag, and then you're both getting that. So you basically ramp it up faster. I believe that's how it works. But he doesn't double flag. Sam Dent, love your vids. Help me out big time for ideas. Do you make your own music for your vids? I've been trying to figure out what song you use in your Negotiator vid about 9:15 mark. Well, that's a good question because that was a long time ago. So I'm not sure. I'd have to look that up. But no, I don't use my own music. Tux, is this channel dedicated to the Division? Is this your job or just your hobby? I mean, can you make money with the game nowadays? Oh, that's a good question. So, I mean, the game is basically at an all-time lull, right? We're kind of like in the valley of the game, I guess, versus the peak of its performance. Basically, and my channel is really young, right? This is a new channel, guys, if you haven't really realized. I mean, the channel itself is about, now actually as of this month, about a year old. Not quite a year, but right there. But really when I started making content was the turn of the year, so like January of this year. So we're coming up to a year, but we're less than a year really. But yeah, so we're relatively new, you're a very young channel, I guess, for the Division, and I just saw an opportunity in the community, and I felt like that needed to be filled, and so I took that upon myself to do that, and that's, I guess, how I started my YouTube career. But it's not really the game that drives in, I guess, the money, and it's not really about the money, but it's, more as, I guess, the job, right, or whatever you want to call it. But it's more. I'm more like, the way I look at it is I'm more like building. I'm more building a brand here. So I hope the value that I'm delivering goes beyond the game, you know. And so part of what I'm looking to do and hoping is working is that I'm bringing people together, you know, like-minded people together. And right now we're rallying on the Division 2, and I have a second channel that I haven't started promoting yet, and I will when I start covering the Battlefield 2042. And I will be keeping these games separate, but delivering the same type of values. And so what I look to do is I look to inform, entertain, and inspire. And so I say if I'm not delivering those three things in every single video drop, then, you know, punch me in the back of the head or whatever, because I'm not doing my job. But and when I do those things, I'm bringing people together to rally on this brand, the TuxedoBandido brand. And so the game can change, but what I'm hoping is that I inspire you enough, or I provide enough value as a brand, as a TuxedoBandido brand, for you guys to come along for the ride. Even if you don't play Battlefield 2042, that I hope that the video itself is entertaining, informative, and inspirational enough for you to watch it and to enjoy it and to appreciate it and to pull some value out of it, even if you're not playing the game. You know what I mean? The Division 2 is really, really funny. It's really funny because I do all sorts of different videos. If you guys have seen some that aren't on builds, for example, maybe they're just informative, maybe they're purely entertainment. And so I do dabble in some of that stuff, like when I'm reviewing something or whatever. But what I found with this community is people love the builds. It's about the builds, you know. And so with every game that I cover, I imagine identifying ultimately what people want to rally on, and that is what I'm going to cover. So you guys decide what content ultimately I create. Now, like for example, if it was, you know, covering, I don't know, just come up with something random, but if it was movie reviews, if that's what you guys told me that you would love, Division 2 movie reviews, that's all you want, or comic books, or, you know, or if it was purely lore, if that's what you guys as a whole told me, both through feedback and statistics, because the statistics that drive a lot of this, right? Then that would be the content that I focus on. I don't always create videos based on what I love, what I want to do. I mean, if I had it my way, I'd probably be creating pure miniseries type videos with you, for you, because I really like the lore stuff and I really love the production value and the entertainment that comes along with that, and the imagination that's being applied. But I love builds too, personally, and you guys love builds, and so that's where where we meet, and that's where I focus a lot of my videos on, because that's what you guys want to see. And that's what this is really unique about this game is it brings a very technical element. I think that's also why we have a very mature crowd. The average player in this game is between 35 and 45 years old, right? That's the average player, guys. Think about that. That's a really mature audience for a video game, right? One of my best mates that I play with is 70-something years old, 73, 74 years old, and I play with him on the regular. I mean, that's unheard of in a video game, right? I mean, the smallest audience is in the teens. Is the basic. I mean, when's the last time you ran into a kid in this video game? When's the last time you played with a kid? I can think of, like, on my left hand how many times I've come across a kid, like twice. You know, a couple of junior hires I've come across, and I think they were unique too. They weren't just your average junior high kids. I think they had a really high IQ. They were like brainiacs, and I think that's what attracted them to the game. But I very rarely run into kids in this game. It's super crazy rare. So yeah, so anyways, it's a really unique audience, and it's made this a really fun journey. But yeah, the game is in a lull, so I'm excited, you know, to your point, you know, for the game to perk up. But for me, it's not about the minuscule ad revenue that YouTube gives us, and it's not about that. For me, I'm looking at the bigger picture. I do this for the bigger picture, and that's about building a brand, You know, so, you know, if you become a member of Texas Players Club, you know, where we are today is, which I feel like everybody is really enjoying and appreciating the value that being a member provides. But it's just, in my opinion, it's just the beginning, you know, and I think that the channel is going to evolve and I will be able to provide much more value as we mature together, you know, and yeah, so, you know, I really like doing this, so. Do for you guys, I do for me. Pietro Nero. Good night, Tux. Always enjoy your builds. Ciao, ciao. Yeah, we are getting close to the end of our time, guys. So if you have any final questions, definitely stick them to me now. Okay. I'm saying it right the first time. Got it. So it's the same team every time. I didn't know specialization stacked, but we'll test it again. Thanks for the feedback. Yeah, it's the same team every time, but hopefully, I think it's about getting your, making sure that they're running the same builds every time. That should be the variable. But when the game does do title updates or even patches, they might make some stealth buffs and nerfs that you don't know about. So that wouldn't surprise me. That wouldn't surprise me at all. Tux, I came from Battlefield Eclipse. Tux, I came from Battlefield. Started back in Bad Company 2. Love the game, but this new one I have mixed feelings about. Yeah, I think a lot of people have mixed feelings about because I think we're seeing a shift in the gaming industry and how these these producers and game developers are doing things now. You know, they're all kind of going to that Call of Duty game model. They're looking for massive player bases, right, to tap into. And with microtransactions, I think they're seeing more value out of that, or hope to see more value out of that. And so I think that's going to make a change in games. Also, because they're building games for that type of scale, imagine the amount of bugs and complexity that you come across, and that's going to affect reviews, right? So, yeah, I know. I mean, even the Division's doing that, right? With X Defiant, Heartland. I think they're all kind of going that way, that free-to-play model. Battlefield's not free, but, you know, it's that big, epic gaming concept, massive players, right? I think they're saying, what, 100 players on a map? It's huge. So, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I'm a big Battlefield. It's just a change. I mean, it's good PvP content for me, especially. I haven't really enjoyed the PvP in the Division. I think it's really annoying how you spawn. And I mean, imagine Battlefield if you spawned with your enemy. Can you imagine? Because that's the Division 2. That's the stupidest part of PvP in Division 2. Let me spawn with the enemy. That's just stupid. It's just like, I think, you know, that's just dumb. So you kill a rogue, his homie kills you, you both spawn at the same base, you come out the door first, he comes out the door second, you can't remember anybody's names because there's too many people in the server, he goes rogue, he shoots you in the back. How many times has that happened? You know? And then you gotta go back to your spawn. It's just stupid. And then it keeps happening over and over again. Yeah, that's happened to me so many times, and then they think they're all, what, they think they're tough shit because they shot you in the back as you're coming out of the spawn? I mean, yeah, people get egos over that, right? Oh, I killed you, man, yeah. It's just like, yeah, thanks, I didn't even know you were there. It's just dumb, It's just a dumb concept. So I haven't been a big fan of the PvP here. For little nuances like that. And there's 1,000 of them I can think of, so. Life is good. Saw a demo on the ability of Unreal 5 engine. Yeah, me too. I love that. Ralph, the div could manage to remaster the game using the Unreal 5 tool. Yeah, totally. I've been thinking of dabbling myself with the Unreal. The engine looks really cool. Rogue Agent 007. All right, got the double O's in there. Nice. Have you seen that new movie, by the way? Was it No Time to Die? I think is what they call it. New James Bond. Hello. Just wanted to say thank you for the content you create. Oh, I appreciate that, man. I just love playing Division 2 on any difficulty. It truly is a wonderful game. It really is. I have a hard time. That's why I've been looking forward to Battlefield because there's just nothing out there like the Division 2, and Battlefield's not like the Division 2, but at least it's entertaining. So I'm really looking forward to our new content, and hopefully Heartland holds up. You know, hopefully it's going to be cool enough to bridge the gap until we get to Division 3. Hopefully Division 3 even comes, but we'll see. We'll see. Bertrand Robillard says, I would like to see a full team run a full future initiative skill builds using the chest talent. I believe it's stacked to 100%. Hey, that's a good question. Yeah, I know what you mean. George Panathas says, that's the reason I play the mature players. It's rare to find a crazy who shouts like he's real in the battle inside his mind. He's really in battle inside his mind. Happened yesterday in conflict, and it was funny and sad together. Funny and sad together. I'm imagining that. Actually, just drew a picture in my head. Kudos. Rogue Agent says, are you going to cover your current build? So yeah, for you that jumped in later in the stream, the build that you're seeing is a build that we've dubbed Nuff Said. And we're calling it Nuff Said because it's got 360% crit damage on 6 skill tiers. It's a hybrid skill damage build with 360% crit damage. So with stats like that, we say Enough Said. So this is a classified build, so it's only available to club members. So if you didn't know, classified builds are secret builds made just for Texas Players Club True and Hardcore Bandito member levels. So if you want to tap into these, you can get access today by making sure you're at least a True Bandito member level. So click that join button below. And that's how you get access to this. So this week coming up, we're gonna have a pretty busy week. Actually, as a reminder, let me drop this link here again. Hopefully I have it saved. Yeah. So I just dropped a link in the feed, and that's a link to the Balls Out 2 post on my community on YouTube. So if you want early access to Balls Out, which is also called Game Over, Part 2, there's a second version coming out. So if you want early access to that, make sure you like that video and comment. All the instructions are in the post itself. So just head over there and do that. So anyways, this next coming week, we're going to have 2 builds. And then if we can get that one likes up, then I'm going to give an early release to the Balls Out. So it'll be like a screening, so like a preview. So it won't be a full build video. And then I'll follow it up with that. And I'll also give a shopping list so you guys can get prepared for Game Over Part 2. And if you don't know, Game Over Part 1 is the Foundry build I created that I hacked into a skill build with 6 skill tiers. It hits like a truck, but it comes with great survivability. And version 2 is going to bring more survivability to the table and also more damage, which we all probably didn't think was possible, but apparently it is. So anyways, Rogue, so this build is classified, so it is available only to Texas Players Cup members, but eventually I do declassify these builds, so don't worry. Eventually you will see the build as it matures. It will be released. Let's see what George says. To all gamers that are complaining for new big titles and all this remaster party nowadays, if you play GTA 5, for example, it's stupid to ask for GTA 6. The game from 2013 brings the money, so they updated this. Good to know. So I think I got through everybody's comments here. Hopefully I didn't miss any of you. If I did, I'll scroll through the comments and maybe reply in the chat. But we are coming to the end of our time for tonight. I appreciate you guys. Thanks for kicking it with me. And I will be doing 2 more streams next week. Again on Thursday for members. And then I'll do our usual time on Saturday for the entire community. And so normally we run this stream on Saturdays at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. For whatever time that is, depends on where you are in the world, but it was the same time as we started this evening. So Anyways, appreciate you guys. Look forward to dropping these new builds, and I will put out a post tomorrow on the calendar of what you can expect for content this coming week. So, thanks for all the new members that joined. Remember to check out the members only playlist on my channel, as well as head over to my Discord. We appreciate you. Next time.